In the sixth hour of play, with seconds ticking down and in a position that was heading to a draw, Gukesh shows everybody why he is playing the World Championship, that he is made of World Champion stuff, and makes nothing short of a statement against Wei Yi. All the other boards had ended in draws, and this was the only game left. India and China were tied at 1.5, 1.5, with this game as well heading to a draw. This was the game of the tournament of the Olympiad from Gukesh D, who is playing the World Championship in 2 months. We were half expecting a Gukesh versus Ding Liren on board one, but it was Gukesh versus Wei Yi. Ding Liren took a rest day today. And this is a beautiful game. We're going to see this without the engine evaluation. That will be giving full understanding of the position. The position deserves it. The game deserves it. E4, we'll be going quickly through the opening. The main part is when we reach the end game. It was a Sicilian, and Gukesh played a nuanced bishop e2, bishop c4, bishop e7, d3. He basically gave black a tempo. After castles, takes, knight d5, bishop e6, queen d2, just controlling g5 actually, stopping bishop g5. A6, castles. Castling long is risky. b5, bishop back, king h8, a3, rook b8, h3, g6. So this is where Wei takes over a little bit because his plan is just bishop back and f5. c3, bishop g7, bishop a2, and now f5. Knight g5. This is where Gukesh gives Wei a good advantage because now this move wastes a big tempo. The bishop can just go back, and what's the knight doing there? Yeah, black can just play h6 anytime he wants, and he can play f4. Everything looks good. Bishop g8, and Gukesh shows why he played knight g5. He takes, and plays f4. So he basically misevaluated the position a little bit. It's a complicated position for everybody, so it's understandable. So here, Wei is better. He can even play a move like e4 and be better, or h6, kicking the knight and then e4. He goes for a sacrifice, which is actually a sound sacrifice. I mean, it is a pawn. He takes it, does Gugesh. But now Wei could have played e4, or let's say takes, and then knight e7 and then e4. And you can include h6 in between. So that was the right way to continue in the same spirit of the sacrifice. But Wei made a big mistake here. He took on f4, breaking his pawn structure. There was good fluid pawn structure in the center. The center was moving forward. But now after pawn takes, Gukesh plays knight f3 because the knight was hanging from the queen. Wei gets back the pawn, but a double pawn. Now knight a5, bishop back, knight b3. Takes, and takes on f4. Now queen b6 check, rook blocks, rook b8. So Wei is ganging upon the b2 pawn, which you can't defend properly because rook b1, bishop takes c3 will win for black. So Gukesh goes for rook d1, which was the only choice he had. So lot of exchanges, and at the end of it, we have an endgame with one pawn extra for Gukesh, but against the two bishops, it's difficult. This is not even the main part of this game. It's an 80 move game. Rook went back, threatening to jump in with the knight. Like, what is the threat exactly? Is it, yeah, knight e5, knight f7? No, knight g5, knight f7 is a mate threat. But it's two moves. And now knight d5. How do you defend against knight e7? Is there a defense? The e finds a defense. It is rook check and then rook d1. Allowing this, allowing this, the two pieces for the rook position. And this is where the fun starts. So this position is drawish. The engine gives 0.00 here. If you see the analysis, it's 0.07. But yeah, this is a drawish position because white has to like bring his knights and take this pawn without losing the a pawn or the g and h pawns. So you can't come in with the king, then you'll probably lose the king side, and it's going to be risky. So Gugesh plays knight b5. Knight was attacked. Rook goes to c2. King goes back. King comes in, and now he brings his other knight in, attacking the rook. Rook check. King moves. King comes in, and now knight d6. Rook attacks the pawn. Knight b5 back. repetition by Wei Yi. And now king e3. Rook attacks the g pawn, so king f2, rook goes back, knight c2, and this is where Gukesh takes the position forward to the first, like, sort of checkpoint. He goes knight c3 and now a4. So the knights have defended each other and the pawn is properly defended. So he has reached a stable position, right? This is now a very instructive endgame. After reaching here, next step would be to activate the king because a rook cannot come anywhere. The square is controlled, the square is controlled, everything is controlled. There's only like these two squares on the last rank for the rook, but when the king comes up. So now Wei plays king e5, and when Gugesh plays g3 because f4 was coming, he plays g3, rook b6, king comes in, and now rook b4. So here Gugesh reaches a like a blockade. The king is cut off from the fourth rank. So how to make progress if the king cannot get in? Gugesh finds a nice move here, nice maneuver. Knight, king d3, h6, king. He repeats a little bit, and then plays knight g1. So first order of business is kicking this king out of here. That's progress, right? Rook goes back, knight f3, king goes back. Now what to do? Here Gugesh can feel the win coming for him. Like he can feel he's going towards, he's making progress. Knight d4, rook comes in, king moves, rook attacks the knight, king comes back. So again he has got into a slight of a hindrance. Now knight went back. He had to change his like position of the knights a little bit here. Rook comes, knight f4, you can't play rook b4 because 4. Rook comes back, knight check, king moves, knight c3, and now rook h1. This is where the game gets intense because it's no longer that simple because you're going to lose the h pawn. h4, f4 is coming, right? So, and even rook h3. So, what to do? He plays knight f3 check and then h4. The king is forced back, so f4 doesn't come that easily. But still, rook h3 attacking the pawn. White has to defend, and now f4. You can't take because of the pin. And if you take with the knight, you lose the pawn anyway. So what to do? Gugesh plays the accurate knight g1. Rook comes back only square, and then he takes and takes. So again, we reach a very different stage of the game. White has a pass pawn, knights are away, king is okay, rook is. Black also has a pass pawn. Knight f3, rook comes back, pawn f5. Wei plays h5. Gukesh brings his knight to c3, h4. This is becoming a bit close for our liking. Knight check, and here king e7 loses because then f6. And if you go here, the knight jumps in. If you go here, also you're in the way of the knights. So Wei finds the accurate king d7 away from the checks. Still knight e5 check. King moves back, f6, and here Wei pushes the pawn. So basically, in this position, there was very few moves to keep the position drawish. He had to find rook d1. Like the path is so narrow already. If you go a little bit back, then knight check, king d7 happened. Knight e5, king d8. Yeah, this is point 0.5, like a decent advantage. Knight c3. Yeah, here Gugesh had this knight g3, but of course you can't blame him. He's just down to last 1 minute. Knight c3, h4, knight check, and knight jumps in f6. And now pawn h3. Gukesh plays f7. What can Wei do? You can't push h2 because then queens with check. Rook f1 only move. And now Gukesh finds the accurate move. Can you find out what is the next move for white? Knight g5. The threat being knight g6 is coming. And the h pawn is hanging. And knight f3 is coming, blocking the rook. So here Wei plays h2. But now can you find the only winning move in this position for white? Knight gf3. Because if you bring this knight back, this knight is covering some good squares. So in a situation where you queen and opponent queens, your knight on e5 is more useful than a knight on g5. So Gukesh plays knight gf3, and after king e7, just takes the pawn. Because if you promote, white promotes with check, and the queen and knight combines together well to give checkmate. So king e7, and Gukesh takes. And the game is still tricky. Gukesh is completely winning here because he has got a passed f pawn. He has to basically bring his knights back where it can help the pawn promote. Like for example, h6 or g6 or g5. He goes knight g4. Knight f3 is not winning, I believe. What happens if knight f3? Let's think for a moment. All this Gukesh does with 1 minute 20 seconds. Here, if rook takes pawn and then promotes, cannot promote, sorry. Then knight g5 is too slow because rook f4. Rook f4 comes, right? So rook takes a4. You will have to play knight g5. That was the idea of playing knight f3. But now rook f4 and we are no longer winning because black can just give up the rook and it's a draw. So accurate moves. He plays knight g4. What's the difference? Now if rook takes pawn, the difference is knight h6 and then there's no rook f4 because knight g6 fork. Wow. Rook check. Here, what is the most natural thing to do? If you go up, then rook takes pawn and then again there's problems. Rook takes knight and then knight takes and then pawn is gone. So this is tricky again. So here if you go, rook takes pawn. Let's say you play king f5. Rook takes knight, king will take. Yeah. Wait a minute. Yeah, rook takes pawn, king takes push. Right. Rook takes knight. This is a draw and push. The king is not in time to help the pawn because push, you can't get in anywhere. You'll have to come till here. King g6, can you come there? Push? No, you can't. Oh, wait, can you? Oh, you can't. If you come there, then black wins. So that means here king e4 is a mistake. King c2, the most natural thing, going towards the rook. That's also a mistake. You know why? After king goes to c2, the point being, it's not winning, it's complete draw because after, let's say, rook f3, yeah, rook f3, king c2, yeah, takes, and then if you go rook here, then rook f4, sorry. So that way, the rook is still stopping the pawn. So king is too far away. But Gukesh plays king d2. What's the difference here? Rook f4 is not possible in that line. Wait a minute. King c2, rook takes, knight h6, there's no rook f4 because knight g6. So that means that's not the problem. After rook takes, knight h6, rook a2 check, king b3, okay, king d3, and then rook f2. Okay, that's why king c2 is not winning. So the important thing is not any trick there. It's just that the rook will not be allowed to get to f2 if the king goes to d2, and Gukesh plays king d2, not even putting a step wrong. And after rook takes, he plays knight h6, rook check, king has to go to e3 to cover f2. King e1 also wins. And now rook check. You can't go to f4. This is the last hurdle for Gukesh. If you go to f4, there's a very nice trick. Just rook. Wait. Yeah, just rook here. And after knight g6, king will just move, let's say to d7 or e6. Let's say d7. And when you promote this check and black draws. So the king cannot go to f4. The most natural thing here is to play king f4. Like if it was me, I would have probably played king f4. Gukesh calmly plays king e4. I mean, imagine the amount of focus you need to even realize king f4 is not winning. King f4 is just a draw. He goes king e4, and here Wei Yi resigned because if you play rook a4 check, now the king can calmly go to okay f5. Still rook will come back. Yeah, so king d5, and that's it. Or is there f5 still? King f5, rook a1, knight g6 check, king d7. There is knight f4 in the end. So king f5 also is fine. So this was one marathon game which ended in 80 moves after 6 hours of play. And Gukesh just shows his class with this game. Winning a game like that, it's versus statement.